Hey everybody, so I'm really picking apart a lot of stuff. Like I'm seriously picking a lot of stuff apart and just like dissecting it. The reason why is because there are a lot of people out there that are under the impression that once they've adapted to their changes that have caused them to now live in a specific way with their cancer disease and chronic illness, that they're healed, or if they don't have any pain anymore, that they're healed. Okay, and that's why I'm taking it to now the, I won't say extreme, but to the actual proper specific measurable result, which is reversing the aging process. Because there are specific triggers out there, indicator triggers. There are specific indicators out there that let you know when something is not right. Okay, so mucus and triggers and inflammation are indicators that you are at overcapacity, and the body must adjust. Okay, acclimate and adapt to the current environment. And then what people don't realize is that the body then also needs to repair the weakness from that adjustment. So this is where the pro-vaxxers don't understand the point of view of the anti-vaxxers, because these anti-vaxxers have all these issues and they're like, well, what the hell? I took the same vaccine and we got a little bit of issues, but we don't have, like, you know, the autism or what you're saying that's what the vaccine did. And so they don't understand their plight. And so the reason why some people recover faster from an adjustment to their environment is because they have a stronger body. They're able to adapt and also repair potentially the damage from that adjustment. Okay. And so, so when you get mucus, it means that you're over capacity and the body's trying to release the excess. Okay. When you get triggered and you get mad and you emote and you have all this anger or sadness or love, any emotion that you have an overabundance of, that lets you know that that is a trigger of something that is, you're at overcapacity. Okay. Inflammation. Okay. So mucus is like the body releasing. Okay. Triggers. Okay. Triggers is when the body is releasing emotion that's at overcapacity. Inflammation is when the body is building up antibodies. And so when you see like a kid that gets a vaccine, whatever it is, and then they have like all this red spots, their body is all red. Well, that's the body adjusting to the new environment. And so white blood cells come up, inflammation comes up, and then eventually the child adapts and those red marks disappear, and the parent breathes a sigh of relief. They may have done some certain, you know, protocols to help manage, but that's the body adjusting. Okay. But where people don't understand why people have continuous chronic issues, compounding is because people, when they adapt, they don't realize that they've gone through an adjustment that needs to be strengthened. Okay, like when you're growing and you're going from first grade to second grade, there's gonna be that period of adjustment where it's going to be uncomfortable, and then you have to adapt to a new environment, a new learning process, new people, new teachers, and then eventually you will adapt. And then you also strengthen yourself because you're going to keep growing. You're going to keep eating the right food. You're going to grow relative to what is expected in that environment. And that's the growth process. And that's the maturation process, I guess. And then you reach a point of maturity. And then this is where our society doesn't understand that you shouldn't be degrading, but we degrade because we haven't then fixed the weaknesses through the growth process. Because every single time you go from one level to first grade, second grade, third grade, fourth grade, and you get your vaccines, you're exposed to viruses, you're exposed to new people, new cultures, new data, new environment, you're adapting, but you're not strengthening the body to be able to recover from that adaptation, because the growth process is a weakening of the body. The growth process and the degradation process are basically two sides of the same coin. It creates weaknesses. Growth creates weaknesses, and so does the degradation process. So both sides of those coins have to be reinforced and strengthen those weaknesses during those two processes. That's why the growth process and the degradation process is the most chaotic in our society, because people don't realize those are the two major points of why we have chaos in our society. And then we have adults, even though they're relatively well balanced, they're still glitching at the same time. Okay. And so when someone says like, oh yeah, well, you know, when someone takes these vaccines, we have to have a safer vaccine, and there's a virus in there, an attenuated, weaker version of the virus. And then they're bitching about the adjuvants, all the additives to it. And they're like, well, there's mercury, there's, you know, formaldehyde, there's aborted fetus cells, there's human DNA, there's retroviruses. And I'm like, okay, well, no matter what, your body has to have those minerals, trace minerals of mercury, formaldehyde, which is it can be broken down to its mineral state. You're getting the DNA, you know, from humans, which you already get in the food supply because humans make the food. You know, you are around people, you are eating fecal matter when you're eating food from restaurants. When someone prepares food at a potluck, you're eating fecal matter, you're eating DNA, you're eating bacteria, okay? So everything that's in a vaccine is already in the food supply. And no, it's not killing you, it's just part of your environment, okay? Nobody lives in a bubble. We are exposed to every single thing. They're like, oh, well, that mercury in the vaccine is crossing the blood-brain barrier. Well, you know what? If that child, when they go and eat this specific food and they're in a specific environment and, you know, they don't live in a bubble, because you're not trying to keep them in a bubble to really weaken their body, no matter what, if they have an imbalance in their minerals, any kind of exposure to any type of mercury, whether it's something, you know, whether it's a trace mineral or in a food, or like a formaldehyde that's in some kind of apple. Formaldehyde can actually be found in nature, in vegetables and fruits. Every single thing you find in a vaccine can be found in the food supply. That's not that it's being poisoned. It's just that is a naturally occurring element. Okay? So it's like, so then, you know, so then that's what then, you know, but that's how they justify their anti-vax stance, is because of the mercury and the formaldehyde and all this is crossing the blood-brain barrier. But alcohol crosses the blood-brain barrier. You know, I don't see many of these adults who are worried about, you know, worried about alcohol too much crossing their own blood-brain barrier. Then it also translates into the child. There's a lot of adults who are anti-vax that still drink alcohol. They don't live a pristine life, and there's no way to live a pristine lifestyle, because if you do live a pristine lifestyle, then you are actually leaving yourself open and weak because you're not able to adapt. Okay? And so the mucus and the triggers and inflammation are the indicators to let you know what the state of your body. So when you do get a vaccine and you get, you know, symptoms, it's letting you know that you are at a very weak state and your body's trying to adjust. And then when your body's trying to adjust, now you have to go and fix those weaknesses. But people aren't aware that that's what they have to do, especially because when you're getting vaccinated as a child, it is an adaptation process to your environment, as well as adults. Because then you're having all these viruses run through so many weak adults that are making the virus stronger, and they're communicable. It now creates a new entity into the world, a new entity. Because viruses, when they're run through 500 billion people, okay, it becomes strong, and then they're communicable. If somebody wasn't communicable and they, you know, if they were 100% well, let's say someone like me, I can be around my husband who may have a virus run through him. And guess what? The virus stops with me. Not because I took drugs, not because I took colloidal silver, not because I did any of these things people do in the detox world, in the allopathic holistic, because my body is able to adapt to that change. It didn't go into inflammation. It didn't go into a mucus stage or inflammation or triggers. And it stayed, the buck stopped here. Was it Eisenhower or Truman? One of those two. Eisenhower or Truman said the buck stops here. So when it comes to viruses and sicknesses, the J-juicer world is really the buck stops here. We're not going to be passed along cancer, disease, and chronic illness to anybody else because the buck stops here. It stops with us. That's the whole point of J-juice. How you stop pandemics is you have to be 100% well. And even though some says, oh yeah, well, I took colloidal silver when I felt a little tickle in my throat. Well, guess what? You just did friendly fire against yourself. When you take colloidal silver, when you take some mucus drying, you know, up substance like Mucinex or NyQuil or anything that stops the symptoms, then you just actually directed those weapons of excess back into the body that says it's trying to release it, and then you just destroyed yourself even more. So even though you're not destroying somebody else and the buck stopped there, but you've now degraded yourself to where now then you are weaker, and then the next virus that you get in contact with is going to get stronger, and eventually you're not going to catch, you know, because even when you do take Mucinex or NyQuil or any of those mucus drying substances, it doesn't stop it altogether, because you're still blowing your nose and you're still around your family members. You're still going to go to the gym or go to the coffee shop or prematurely enter yourself back into society after you've been sick. So you're still communicable. That Mucinex and the NyQuil really isn't a surefire thing. Neither is that colloidal silver or that dandelion root or that elderberry syrup. You're still communicable, making those viruses stronger. Okay, so with the J juice world, the virus buck stops here. But you have to build up to that. A year ago, or actually May of 2018, okay, 2 years ago, actually, when you think about it, it'll be 2 years ago this coming May. But that's when I was last sick with some kind of major flu. Right after I got off the plane from Dr. Phil, I was sick for about a month. I went through 8 different airplanes, went to North and South, California, and under a lot of stress of defending J juice. Okay, so it was, it was bound to happen back then. But I've been around people since then who've had major flu bugs, and I was never the pathogenic person infecting the population. But my husband was, all of his friends were. Everybody that has a weak body that gets exposed to a virus that their body can't handle, they are now infecting the population, making that flu bug stronger. Why does the flu happen? Because we have to enter from one environment, one climate change of summer into fall, and you have extreme temperatures, and the body has to adjust. And guess what? The viruses they're not new. They're still there, but the body is now changing, trying to adapt to the new climate, the new temperature. So that's why flu season happens. So you get the mucus. Now, last night, this is interesting. The last couple of days, I've been feeling a bit more tired, but that's about it. Take maybe an hour nap or so. Last night, I felt more mucus, so I just blow my nose, but I wasn't sick, but I just felt more of my nose running. And this morning too, I just just blowing stuff out. And I just took a shot of my J juice, just took a shot just to help with the transition of going from fall to now winter, or summer to now fall. For me, this is like fall to winter, because California, these are the same kind of temperatures. Here, it's actually from summer to fall, because winter is not until the snow, not until we have actually snow, or in the 30s. Okay, so 50s and 40s is really not winter in Ohio. But I'm noticing that my body's adjusting. A little bit of this dry skin, and my dog too, she's getting a little bit of the adjusting to the weather here from summer to fall. But that's the extent of it. But that's why you have now bodies are weaker during this time, because they're adjusting. But my body's so strong that even through these different, adjustments, acclimation, adaptation, it's still able to keep away the major symptoms. I'm able to blow out any excess bacteria that would then compromise all of my 11 different systems. Okay, so I just blow my nose, and then my husband isn't around. I'm not communicable. I'm not sick. I'm just blowing out excess. Now, if you were to get in contact with this stuff, I don't know, will you get sick? I have no idea. But I blow my nose, I take a shower, and done. Okay, all that antigen is all in the garbage can, or in the shower, or in the toilet, in tissues. But that's the whole point of when you're on the J juice and you finally get at least 99.99% better. When you do go through these periods of acclimation where you're adjusting from one season to the next, you might see a few more mucus balls come out. You might see a few things come to surface, but nothing crazy. You might see a little bit of a change in your skin. Okay, but that's about it. You're not going to see me laid up with a fever and a headache and blowing up sputum and coughing. But you'll see the body trying to release any excess, because that's the way the body is supposed to do things. It's supposed to release any excess. So that's why I'm saying, you guys, the mucus and the triggers and the inflammation are indicators your body's at overcapacity. And when you have a lot of mucus, a lot of triggers, and a lot of inflammation, that you have a very weak body, because your body cannot handle that amount of information. And it's not able to handle the environment. It's not able to adapt. Okay? And so those are the indicators you have to be aware of. So that's how you know when you're doing the J juice that you shouldn't reintroduce foods too early, when you start seeing a whole bunch of mucus, or you're getting triggered, or you get all this inflammation. When you're allergic to nightshades or allergic to fish or nuts, and you try to reintroduce it too early, you're going to see inflammation. You're going to see anaphylaxis may happen. Then you got to go get your steroids. Okay? So, you know, you want to really, before you reintroduce foods, you know, that are off the protocol, as well as anything that you're allergic to, you got to do the J juice for a while, see some major reversals in some major stuff, and then you can start testing. And then you'll see, oh, okay, I got inflammation, I got triggered, I got mucus. I'm going to lay low on that and wait, and let me do more of the J juice. And then the specific measurable result is that you look 30 for the rest of your life. You don't look 70 in the Matrix. You don't look like the Crypt Keeper. You're not balding, you're not wearing glasses, you're not gray hair, and you're not brain foggy or, you know, highly triggered all the time. You've already set a lot of boundaries, and you've moved past things that used to piss you off, and you just have a whole different, you know, outlook and perspective on everything. Okay? So, you know, the adaptation process going from growth to degradation is the most chaotic, and it's the most detrimental to our society. And that's why our society the way it is. That is why we have presidents, and why we have Congress the way they are. That's why we have corruption in corporations. Guess who are the CEOs? People who are in their 50s, 60s, and 70s that are degrading. Even if someone's in their 30s and they haven't got a hold of their biochemistry in the right way. You know, Mark Zuckerberg, he's young, but he's getting older. But hey, Facebook is great. We love Facebook. During his window of youth, he's created a great platform, along with some other people that are in their window of time of great youth. And then you'll see him have to step down at some point down the road. And then somebody else goes, just like with Yahoo, just like with Google, just like with all these different big companies. You know, like Steve Jobs, he had to go and die because of his pancreatic cancer. Eventually, he had to step down at some point. Eventually, Bill Gates will have to step down, which I think he has left Microsoft, and now, you know, is allowing another CEO to do what they do. But I see you, sugar. Okay? So that's why our society is the way it is, because we have youth that are trying to grow, and they're glitching at every single point as they're growing. And they're adapting with, yeah, they're taking their vaccines, or exposed to a lot of people, and they're adjusting, but they're not fixing the weaknesses from every adjustment, from every acclimation, from every point of growth. Just like when you go to first grade, second grade, third grade, you know, you have to acclimate to each grade up, but you haven't fixed the weaknesses that, you know, whenever you have an upset of homeostasis, a weakness happens. So you have to keep, that's why the whole thing, the J juice, is when you do go through the symptoms and you go through each level of healing, you're bringing up the stuff, the weaknesses that you already have, you're fixing those weaknesses, and then you're reinforcing the body to be able to handle the next level of healing. But that's not what happens in the allopathic holistic world. They change your biochemistry, but they don't fix the device. They don't reinforce the device to handle that change. And so it weakens that person more. But they still go through upset homeostasis, but the device hasn't been upgraded to handle that. Okay? And so that's why, you know, the adaptation process in the allopathic holistic world is very like a false sense of security, because yeah, I mean, if you're obese and you just got off of an operation and you finally healed, but you still have major imbalances, but at least you can get up in the morning and make your coffee and have a relative quality of life. But no, you're not going to be running marathons, which you shouldn't anyways. But no, you're not going to be, you know, moving, you know, faster. You're not going to be at the tip top shape, but you are okay with status quo. That's adaptation to negative mutations, which is why you don't see people progress further than where they're at. They're okay with being overweight and now having a limited mobility. They're okay with that. They're okay with smoking their pot with a limited sense of a future, because that's what they've been accustomed to. It's the adaptation process to negative mutations is what causes then the stagnancy in our society. And then what causes people to hate J juice, because it's forcing you now finally literally wake up and actually heal your body, and you got to feel to heal. And it isn't for everybody. Some people will anesthetize themselves until they pass away. Okay? So so that's why the J juice is really for the strong people, because when you go through the upset of homeostasis and then the adaptation and then strengthening the weaknesses during that healing time, it's, you know, it's not for the faint of heart. It's going to be downright sucking for some people. It was relatively easier for me, though. I'm telling you, somebody came from cancer, disease, and chronic illness, and then trying to manage the media, and then try to manage trolls, and then try to manage the government and the FBI and the Attorney General. That somebody that would have been worse positioned than me, worse, like, you know, worse health than me, would not be able to handle the Dr. Phil, the media, the FBI, the OAG, and all the trolls and all the bloggers and all of the nasty emails and the phone calls and all that stuff. So I was lucky that I only had PMDD. But if I was somebody that had major obesity issues, major cancer, and try to heal and manage all that and roll this out, there's no freaking way. So that's what I'm saying. Those of you that have a lot more issues than me, be very glad you don't have to deal with all that. All you have to deal with is just your world. So some of you, you know, are very weak, but you don't have the extra added stress. And some of you have a lot of added stress. Some of you have, you know, 5 or 10 children. Some of you have an image to uphold. And so it's harder to go through the healing process, because now you're going to have skin conditions to come through, you know, come to surface. You're going to have to take time off to be able to heal, because when you're having a major massive headache and you have psoriasis and eczema come up all over your arms and hair and not hair, but arms and face, and you still have to go and sell a bunch of drinks to a bunch of people. You don't want to look like a leper while you're healing, but that's necessary if you want to get to the other side, to where you can now go on any life trajectory instead of a death trajectory. Okay, right now, our society, the way it is, allopathic and holistic, they have suppressed the actual healing process, to where if you do have eczema and psoriasis, there will be drugs, or there'll be, or you will just stay in this certain homeostasis where you're not going to bring up the healing process. But then at every single change in temperature or change in climate, you're going to see your eczema and psoriasis act up. You're going to see the different viruses that you've been carrying act up at certain times of the season, because that's when your body's going through an adjustment process from summer to fall. How many of you have cold sores that come up every single time the wind changes or the season changes? Well, that's right there should tell you, whenever you have the season change, your body has to go through that adjustment, and then guess what? Inflammation happens. It's trying to heal and trying to adjust to the new conditions. And then once it finally is okay, it's going to stay 30 degrees for however long, then the body adapts. But then people adapt to their negative mutations, and that's when people get stuck in that loop of a false sense of security. And they're okay with aging, they're okay with drinking massive amounts of alcohol, and they don't care if they go out with a bang. But I'm telling you, you know, you don't know how you're going to leave this earth. And some people do stroke and then have half paralysis. And so when they're half paralyzed, stuck in a nursing home, getting their ass wiped by some stranger who doesn't give a crap, that's not how people want to leave. But you can't predict that. So why even roll the dice for that to happen? Just, you know, if you're strong now and you're youthful now and you've done most of the fun things, take the time for yourself. Okay? Do the J juice, even a little bit in the beginning. Okay? Recognize the mucus, recognize the triggers, recognize the inflammation. Keep doing J juice. Try to manage them as much as you can without having to turn to allopathic and holistic. But if you have to, fine. And then take the time off when it's necessary so you can heal. You don't need to go out every Friday night and every Saturday night and whoop it up at the bar. You can stay home and watch Netflix and heal. And then say, you know what? 3 or 4 years from now or 2 years from now, when I'm so much better, I'm going to go and this is what I'm going to do. And you're going to have not just 20 years left on your life or 30 years left on your life. Now you have, sky's the freaking limit. You know, if it wasn't for cancer, disease, and chronic illness and aging, what would you die from? some freak accident, car accident that you're not in control of, or a plane crash, or nuclear war because our leaders are going crazy, okay? But you wouldn't die from cancer, disease, and chronic illness or aging because you would have already conquered that in your body. Now it's everything else that you have to deal with, adapting to the changes of our society. But mucus and triggers and inflammation are indicators to let you know the state of your body, strong body versus weak body. And you want to be a strong body, but you have to able to earn that. Okay? So anyways, there's that. All right, talk to you later. Bye. I see you.